Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps. And my guest on the show today is Dr. Charles Jones. Dr. Jones, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So guys, let me give you the backstory of how I met this guy and how he's been saving my life. So Lana, my wife, has been telling me about you since the day we met. She's like, you have to go. I know her father has been going for like 20 years and stuff. I'm like, chiropractic, what do you call it? Chiropractory? Chiropractic was something that I'd heard about, but I've seen obviously the famous videos on TikTok with the cracks and whatever. And I used to think, I'm like, is that real? Does that actually happen? But anyway, long story short, I was going through some medical issues, and then I came to you. And since I came to you, it's been, I think, past 6 months, it's been a game changer because I feel better and everything just, I like the way you approach like a patient in terms of because I did all the medical tests. I've done them. And everything was like, yeah, you're good. It's fine. Your blood levels, your stomach, all that. But I'm like, okay, if everything's good, why am I still feeling this way? And it was only until I came to you and we did those adjustments. And not only that, the supplementation that you gave me after that was super, super helpful. So I wanted to dive in today about what is chiropractic? How is it different from traditional medicine? How do you guys analyze the body differently? Because I think it's not one or the other, but I think there's a different approach that you guys take. So before we get into everything, Dr. Jones, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there. By the way, do you want me to call you Charles or Dr. Jones?
Charles is fine.
Charles is fine. All right, cool.
Yeah. I got into chiropractic. I was a ex-motorcycle racer when I was young, and I had a severe accident. At the time, I fractured my spine, and I come from a family of physicians.
Oh, okay.
I had went through the normal medical route, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was having a lot of issues still. So I ended up going to a chiropractor for the first time I was 17. And it was like a game changer for me.
Yeah.
It was like immediate change in how I felt. My body started to respond very quickly. And was my first exposure to chiropractic.
Okay.
So I originally started university. I was going to be an engineer.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's quite a switch. Okay. Interesting.
And because my mind kind of thinks in
It's very systematic. Yeah.
very linear, very black and white. And I got into my third year in university, and I was kind of bored. And at the time, I was working as a personal trainer at night.
Okay.
When I was in undergrad. So I was really getting more and more into health. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to change majors and go into pre-med.
Okay.
My junior year, I switched. Most of my classes in the U.S., you do your general ed the first two. Mm-hmm. So the majority of my classes
they carried over
anyway.
Perfect.
And when I finished my pre-med, I was like, do I go into medicine? Do I go into dentistry? Do I go into chiropractic? I wasn't sure. So I followed my GP around, and I was bored to death just watching that, And a lot of, older people, a lot of, now I can relate, but, and a lot of just kids with runny nose, stuff like that. And then I followed a dentist around, and I thought, no, I don't really want to do dentistry. And then I followed my chiropractor around, and it was like a really cool experience because he was seeing a lot of athletes, a lot of people that really cared about their health, and he had such a great rapport with all his patients, and that's why I went. And I had such a positive experience earlier. I went, you know what, I'm going to become a chiropractor.
Okay. And that's really, really, I didn't know that you did, because when I was doing my research, I know that you did motocross for like 10 years, then you had that really bad injury, and the doctor was telling you that, you know, you're going to be in pain for like forever. You're going to have another 2 surgeries by the time you're 30. And then, so it's interesting hearing, when you were hearing that at the time and that positive experience you had with that first chiropractor that you went to see. And now with the knowledge that I guess at that time, did that make you lose your faith in like in medicine a little bit? Because I can imagine it would, with such a serious injury, and then something that now, you know, like you're perfectly fine and you didn't have to have those surgeries and stuff. So it's weird. I'm not sure how you would have felt at the time.
Well, I think one of the things that really swayed me is that the philosophy of chiropractic is it's more of a natural type of healing art. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with the musculoskeletal system affecting through the nervous system, but you're given a lot of nutritional classes. You're given a lot of exercise to have the patient change that way, instead of just automatically handing somebody a drug and say, here, take this, which is the way everything was being taught, especially at that time in the medical schools. It's highly ran by the pharmaceutical companies, okay, and the majority of research and everything comes through the pharmaceutical end of things. Now, where the big difference between chiropractic and medicine is there is always a place for medicine. I mean, I'm not trying to downgrade medicine in any way.
Yeah.
There's times when you have to have surgery. There's times where you have to have some type of medicines. Maybe you got to balance your hormones, whatever it may be. But if you want to really make somebody healthy, you know, you have to work with the patient. You have to get them eating right, sleeping right, doing exercise. That's where the big difference in philosophy is. And it's tough to do that. It's a lot easier to give them a pill than it is to sit down and say, you know what, you need to lose weight. And this is how we're going to do it. And because you have to deal with the rapport of the patient and how much they're going to follow through on your instruction.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to, in the work that you do, there's a lot more investment and effort on your part on building rapport with that patient and understanding their backstory. Because like you said, obviously the doctor's going to ask you for your medical history and so on. They're going to look at the charts, the graphs and stuff. But kind of like you said, the medical field seems very plug and play. This is the problem, do this. This is that, do that. And I think in the work you do, there's a lot more, I think, in maybe investigation that you have to do. Would that be about right?
You have to understand where's the dysfunction, where's the disease process starting, you know? And that takes a little bit of in-depth time sometimes to figure that out. And the body is you got to look at it holistically. You know, is this person having problems because their hormones aren't right and they're not able to lose weight, they're putting on a lot of weight, they're tired all the time, they don't want to exercise, their lifestyle may be really poor, you know, they're in front of a computer 12 hours a day, you know, and that dramatically affects the neck and upper back, dramatically. So you can't fix that with a pill.
Yeah.
And the only time you can fix it with surgery is at the very end stage when you can't do anything else. Then you got to go and infuse the guy.
Yeah.
So there's many steps
before you get to that.
Before you get there.
Okay. Over the last few months, I've been watching a lot of podcasts related to health because it's just an area that I'm interested in. Not saying that I'm healthy at all, but it's just an area that I like to learn, and medicine and kind of like the work you do, stuff that interests me. So there's a guy called Gary Brecka. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And he talks about how his philosophy is, he talks about something called, I'm going to go super technical here, and I might butcher this, by the way, so I apologize in advance. Something like your methylation, and that kind of affects so many different areas of how you like process things, how your hormones are balanced and so on. And his philosophy is the body just needs, like, obviously there's a time and place for medicine, there's time and place to go to a chiropractor, but at the end of the day, he's like, you have deficiencies in your body which are causing you to have certain conditions, certain issues, and so on. He's like, all you need to do is find out what that is, supplement it. Obviously, there's a lifestyle change that probably has to come with it, and that will fix the problem. What would you say to that? Would you agree with that, or do you think there's more to it or less to it? What would you say?
I fully agree with that.
Okay.
A lot of people, if you think of most diseases today, your chronic diseases like diabetes type 2, heart disease, even most forms of cancer, they're all lifestyle induced.
Really? Is that significant?
It's that significant.
Wow.
So if you're living a real clean lifestyle, you're getting your adequate sleep, that's when your body is going to function at its highest level. Think about if you were a car, okay? Now, if you had a Ferrari, most guys are going to take care of that Ferrari. They're going to put, they're going to make sure the oil is changed, that you're putting in good fuel all the time. You're going to make sure it's clean all the time. And you're not going to take it out and bang it around in the desert. You only get one Ferrari, and that's your body. But people treat them like a Toyota. I'm sorry to say.
In fact, it's true. It's true. That's such a. I love that analogy. It's so clear. Okay, so let me ask you this then: if we've established that lifestyle is such a big factor, and supplementation can be the key to addressing many issues and chronic issues and so on. But the question then becomes is there a point of no return? For example, like now for people who have diabetes, they take the insulin injections every day because their body physically can't, produce that insulin that they need. So is it like so in my case, for example, I would see that as you've passed you've gone over that, you've passed that barrier where it was still fixable, or is it in your opinion still treatable?
There's definitely a point of where you have to get more and more aggressive with the type of treatment you got to.
Okay.
So, like if you're let's take a musculoskeletal problem, like a neck issue. Okay. If you constantly are on a laptop all day long and you're not doing any exercise, you're not taking adequate rest, you're sleeping in a real poor position, and all you're doing for the pain is you keep taking Brufen, I feel a little bit better, but it's still kind of there. You end up either causing irreversible damage to your disc, or you start to get osteoarthritis, and then we will all get that to a certain degree as we get older.
Okay.
I'll give you a good example of this. When I first came out of school, you never saw a disc issue in someone until late 30s, early 40s would be the earliest you see it. I just had a patient last week, 17.
What? 17? Wow.
And what's really driving me crazy is all these kids are going to school, and the schools are making them go on your iPad. Bring your iPad in so you can do your homework on your iPad. Well, they're like this.
Yeah.
That's okay if you're just doing your homework, but now the kid's not going out and they're not playing soccer anymore.
Yeah.
They're playing on their iPad after schools. So it's just the amount of hours that people are putting in with poor posture, and they're not doing anything to rectify that. Then we're seeing dramatic degeneration within the.
Yeah.
That's a musculoskeletal order. The other way we can look at it is when somebody's eating poor quality foods. They're eating a lot of carbs. They're getting heavier. They're putting on more and more fat. And it gets to the point where they become insulin dependent, and then they have to go on a heavier. Instead of stopping and say, hey, you know what? Let's zip the mouth a little bit, eat a little bit cleaner, do some exercise.
Yeah.
And bring it back that way.
Do you think that it sounds like you know what I think is frustrating sometimes, like speaking as your perspective might be one thing, but mine might be something else, is it sounds like from all the things I watch, I research, I listen to when it comes to health, it seems like the things that you need to do to be, in quotations, healthy are pretty simple, and yet we all don't, and majority of us, myself included, by the way, I'm not saying I'm anything special. Why do you think if it's so simple, then why don't we do it? That's the thing. I don't even know. I'm not like that, and I don't even have the answer for myself.
Humans are lazy. And there's also, it seems to be a significant loss of common sense anymore. No, that's not true. They know they're doing the wrong things.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't want to do it. They're enjoying that cupcake. They're enjoying that glass of wine. They're enjoying sitting around and not exercising, And that's the majority of problems today. Think about how we used to live. We had to walk from point A to point B. From the time we woke up in the morning, and everywhere we did is we walked. Now we're forcing people to get step counters to say, you need 10,000 steps a day, And people aren't doing it. The average step per day is like 2,500 now. That's barely to the bathroom and back a few times.
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating on that part. Is just trying to motivate people to move.
Yeah, to move 100%. Look, I've even speaking, myself, I've been in a phase for quite a while that I've been inactive, but now we're slowly trying to get back. And what you're talking about is so true, that it does come down to it is laziness at the end of the day. I'm not gonna sit here and try to bullshit anyone. It's pure laziness. But I'm curious from your perspective, is it? And I think I love the example that you use, that, how things have changed, and how back in the day, for example, I love the 10,000 step example. You would get that anyway because that was your life. So you didn't have something to, it was, I think the problem is even for myself, and I'm like, I should walk half an hour every day. I'm talking, this is a personal thing. Once I think of it in that way, like as something I have to do, that requires like a mental effort to get my ass up the chair and get out the house. And I guess if someone is in that situation, what advice would you have to them, or how would you try to speak to them to make that effort that they see as something big a little more reasonable in their mind, even though it is reasonable? It's half an hour of walking, come on.
There is a point where you have to have certain triggers to make your body, I need to do this. And it may be something like your children. It's like, what? I want to have grandchildren someday. I want to watch my child grow up. That could be a good trigger. The other thing is just realizing you're in pain all the time and you're getting sick and tired of being in pain. The only way you can make a lifestyle change is it starts in here. I can't force you. Your wife can't force you. It has to come from within.
Yeah.
And if you look at the big, your really big athletes, your athletic stars, they're the strongest up here before they ever step onto a court or onto a pitch somewhere.
Yeah, that's so true. Everyone, all the biggest guys always talk about, it's all the mental game. So I became, and once I became a licensed hypnotherapist, I really understood, like I got a deeper understanding of how powerful this is, but how dumb we are we are as people. But I'm coming back to the whole chiropractor area. So because I want people to, because even before I came to you, maybe I had some skepticism or so on. So, and sometimes there's that, some people say that chiropractors are, in quotations, not real doctors. So I guess my question is, I feel like it's gotten better recently. Like people are more open to it. People are more interested in that in the work that you do. So I guess why do people say that, like chiropractors are not real doctors, just because you didn't get that? But if you can still help me and do all that.
We're going to get into some political stuff.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. I'd love to, please.
Okay. I'll take it all the way back to when chiropractic started.
Okay.
Both chiropractic and the osteopathic profession, they started about the same time at the turn of the 20th century. And the chiropractic profession really was kind of evolved out of the naturopathic realm, trying to do everything as natural as possible. And the early chiropractic doctors really said, you don't need drugs, you don't need surgery. They're really anti-medicine, okay? And they also tried to say, oh, we're going to treat cancer. We're going to treat, by doing chiropractic. No, well, that didn't pan out. So it created a big divide between the medical doctors and the chiropractors of the time. This is back, up until the 1920s. Now, here's an interesting thing. What the AMA did, the American Medical Association did at that time, is they came to the osteopaths and the chiropractors and the naturopaths and said, look, we're going to put everything under the AMA, but you have to you start to accept doing drugs and surgery. And at the time in America, the osteopaths accepted that, okay? So if you go to an osteopath in America today, they're very much just like an MD. They're pushing their drugs. Very little manipulation, very little of the natural, and they're doing a lot of surgery, Now, at that time, some of the osteopaths that didn't want to do that route, that's when they went over to Europe, and that's when osteopathy started in Europe. Okay, the chiropractor said, no way, we're not going to do this, and they stayed separate, okay? And this went on to the point where there was such a it's almost like the Democrats and the Republicans now.
Oh, it's like that. Okay.
It's that much a divide up until about the 80s. And then we started to realize, chiropractic's not going away, and it started to build ground, especially through sports medicine. And the reason for that is because you're getting really good results with the human body by what they were teaching, Just what do you think about what we're talking about today? Sleeping right, eating right, exercise, and then making sure the body's in proper tune. And that's gotten more and more ground, to the point where we're kind of ahead of the ball game because people are getting fed up with having drugs pushed down, and you're seeing that more and more and more.
Yeah. I had, that's so, I never knew the history of the field, and the way you described it as like, once you said Republican and Democrats, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get the divide, and I get why it's so challenging. There
was a large antitrust suit that the chiropractic profession won in the 80s. And it was against the AMA at that time because they were trying to, and they started all sorts of things to discredit the chiropractic profession. Oh, they're not real doctors. Well, we were doing the same amount of hours, pre-med with, by the time you come out of school, it's 8 years in America.
Even for chiropractic, it's 8 years too. Oh, wow.
8 years. Wow. I had my bachelor's degree first. Then you go into your postgraduate work, and then you do your internship, and it's different though in Europe and Australia. It's not quite that long, but in America it's that way.
Yeah, I know in America there's because my younger brother, he's in med school right now, and he's in the UK, and it's 5-6 years I think, and then you go out and do your specializations and so on.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is so they won that suit. Chiropractic has been becoming more popular over the last, I guess, since the 80s. It's been growing in popularity. Is it now accepted by the AMA? Is it considered a legitimate medical, it would fall under that? Because the reason I say that is, for example, my insurance, for example, covers that. So if it wasn't medical now, then they probably wouldn't. That's my logic. What would you say?
Yeah. What's really interesting is it's before before that lawsuit came out, if an MD actually referred a patient to a chiropractor, that MD could lose his hospital admitting privileges. That's how bad it was.
Was that bad?
It was crazy.
Wow.
So after that, the AMA couldn't do that to them anymore. So all that stuff stopped. And then chiropractors were getting rotations on hospital staff, and we were being more and more accepted in, to the point where it's almost, technically it's an alternative medicine, but it's almost within the mainstream realm now.
Yeah. I would say that, up until I'd say 5+ years ago, I'd heard of chiropractors, but there was never, I was always very skeptical about it just because of, how I grew up.
Yeah.
I'd never experienced it myself. But what's interesting is, so this is where my head, kind of explodes a little bit. I'm like, okay, this is, because I've had people on the podcast and we've spoken about, the benefits of, natural medicine and everything we've talked about so far. When when you reflect on maybe 100 years ago, there's so many things today that, there are issues today that didn't exist back then. And natural medicine has been around since the beginning of time. Different cultures around the world use different things. Like, for example, Korea as ginseng, and so my question is, let's say I'm Khalid now. I come to you. I'm like, I want to learn about what natural medicines I could take to address maybe some of the things I'm having. And I think this is where, as a patient, I struggle, because I'm going to go to the doctor. The doctor's going to tell me, okay, they're going to do some tests, whatever. This is what's wrong. Here's the pill or the medicine, what you need to do. And, you're on your way. I don't have to, there's no like mental investment or research on my part. But if I could address these issues without having to go to a doctor and naturally, maybe I would rather do that. But I need the people I've spoken to, like yourself and others on the podcast, you guys have such a depth of knowledge in that to advise me on what I should be taking. Even from my last meeting, you're like, take milk thistle. I'm like, what the hell is that? I've never heard of that before. So what do you say to that? Is that the challenge, or what is that the block that stops people from diving deeper into natural medication?
Yeah. Now, this is a tough part, but one of the best things that's happened in the last 10 years, but sometimes some of the worst, is Dr. Google. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Google's the problem.
So it does allow the patient to really, they can put in their symptoms, and you can get a good idea of what's going on. Okay. Now, when you're utilizing natural medicines, what you're trying to do, if you're taking a nutrient, okay, or a supplement or a vitamin, mineral, whatever it may be, you're trying to balance your biochemistry of your body, right? And the majority of dysfunction is usually we're lacking some chemical.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. Now, let's take example, blood pressure.
Okay.
Okay. You go to the MD and the guy takes your blood pressure. It's elevated. He's got two choices to go with. He can give you a beta blocker, which slows how your heart compresses and how much it pumps out, or you can take a diuretic, for example, which reduces the peripheral resistance that the heart has to pump through. So you lose some of your fluid, so it can pump easier. Okay. Now, are you having high blood pressure because you've got plaquing in your arteries, and that's because you've been eating a lot of, you're producing a lot of cholesterol, or you're eating a lot of triglycerides in your diet, a lot of fats, so you're getting a hardening of that particular artery? It could be that, or you may have a kidney issue, and your kidneys aren't producing proper hormones that help regulate that. So you got to look deeper than just, let's make that blood pressure in here. Mm-hmm. We don't care that the kidneys are shutting down, but your blood pressure is really good. Mm. See, that's where you got to connect the dots all the way through.
Okay.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
So yeah. So I think in traditional medicine, you treat the disease, not the patient. It's kind of, and that example is perfect because in like, for example, that high blood pressure, he's just gonna, okay, this is what he has. I'm gonna give him that medicine for that, and it's not necessarily taking that next step to understand where is that actually coming from. So because I think like, for example, I'm going to use myself as an example. When I came and we started working together, I saw like this was my last resort because I had everything else on the medical side had not worked out.
Yeah.
But then when I came to you and you did your adjustments, and what blew my mind honestly in everything was when you told me you lift your leg and you're like, oh, there's something wrong, and then you just like did something, and all of a sudden it was instant. And that is what blows my mind. So how do I, as a patient now, how can I get a deeper understanding of what am I lacking, and what is the supplementation that I need to be doing? Like, what are the kind of tests I need to do to find that out? Because my blood is all good, kidney, all the organs are functioning well, fine, great. But there's now, as we've been talking now, okay, that's good, fine. I want to go to level 2. I want to go deeper and start looking at that. What are the kind of things or tests I need to do? Where do I need to be looking for research? Who do I need to be seeing? That's where, this is very personal, by the way. Yeah. I'm just super curious that what do I need to do now? What would be next step?
Okay. When we're looking at somebody who's not feeling good and they're not functioning well,
yeah.
Okay, you think of a triangle. Okay. So on that triangle, we have structure down here, what's going on with the body structurally, okay? And that's also how the nervous system works, and I'll talk a little bit later about nervous. We have the chemical side of things, okay? Is there something lacking hormonally? Is there something lacking in a vitamin? Vitamin D is a big one here, okay?
Yeah, surprising.
Which is so many different functions within the body. So the chemical side, this is where most MDs work on, the chemical side of things. And then we have the psychological side of things. And this is where, like, if you're under a lot of mental stress constantly, if you're having issues at work, issues at family, so that's going to have a knock-on effect into the overall well-being of the human body. So what you want to try and do is balance all those things.
Okay.
So how do you do that? When I look at somebody, I'm using the nervous system to do certain tests. So like if I'm using a muscle as an indicator to kind of see what's going on, there's different ways of seeing how quickly the body will respond. Okay. So if we go into the nervous system, okay, let's separate the nervous system into two sides. We got the peripheral nervous system over here. We have the autonomic nervous system over here. Autonomic is everything that's automatic, focusing of our eyes, beating of our heart, our blood pressure, how we sweat, this is autonomic. And that's split into your sympathetic and parasympathetic, okay? So over here is the peripheral. That's everything that we can control. I want to lift my arm. My brain goes, lift the arm, and I can do it, okay? That's more within, if there's issues within an athlete, for example, okay? Now, if we're having a lot of hypertension, for example, okay, that usually means that everything's switched on. The body's firing away. The heart's pumping really hard. We got an elevated pulse rate. Everything's cranked up. So when you work with the body through chiropractic, you can have a huge effect on an autonomic nervous system. So you can adjust specific levels, and you can immediately lower blood pressure. Will it stay that way? It depends.
Okay.
It depends. If the issue is just the structure of the body, it will stay that way. But if there's another trigger over here because of something else, you haven't corrected the loop yet. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's fascinating to me. It's so like intricate yet and complex at the same time, and understanding what to do when and going deeper into, those areas. So let me ask you this question, because is a chiropractor someone that you should be so I should be seeing them on a consistent basis, or is it as and when needed? Because I know, for example, from just the couple sessions we've had together, I know I came to you one way, left a different way, but then we didn't see each other for a while, and I'm sure and then you get unbalanced again, and then you go in, you get unbalanced, but you don't know. Like me, I had no idea. I wasn't feeling well, and certainly I'm like, okay, I know that side's good, so I'm going to go back to Dr. Jones. So when you're considering going to a chiropractor, like where should it fit in?
Okay. This is a good question, because a lot of people fully don't understand this part. And we're seeing more and more people needing chiropractors because of the computer and the phone. And, I would see more people that, because my background's in sports medicine, I did a lot of work with athletes. So if the athlete got tackled or something like that, then something got thrown off, then I could correct him. But now it's because of posture and how people are working and how they're sleeping and their posture over time. So if you think of it this way, there's two ways we come out of balance with our musculoskeletal system: quickly and slowly. The quick way is abnormal force on a healthy individual, getting tackled in the football game, and all of a sudden you got an issue. You've been knocked out of alignment that way. The more common way is the slower way, and that's postural. Something you're doing over years at a time. Now, that period of how much you need to be adjusted depends on what you're doing in the meantime. If you're somebody going to the gym and you're exercising regularly and you're eating right, maybe get checked once a year, or if your symptoms change, if pain starts to come back, or if your blood pressure starts going up, whatever that may be. But if you're somebody who's playing rugby, I need to see it probably once a week. It really depends. So it's a variable type of thing.
And so it's interesting. So the work you do, or what you do after the session, after a chiropractic session, will dictate either the need you're going to have for how soon you're going to need another one, or if a symptom changes that you're like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's completely been fixed yet or healed, so I might need to go back for another. Is it a process?
It is a process.
It's a treatment process. One, I can't just come to you once. You could crack every bone, every angle in my body, and all of a sudden I'm a brand new person and I'm good forever. That's not necessarily how it works. Correct. And I can imagine the longer I've had this issue for, the more work it's going to take to both in a session with you and outside in my lifestyle that I'm going to have to do to adjust that, to correct that.
Yeah, the way you can think of somebody that's gained a lot of weight. They didn't put on a lot of weight after one fatty meal. It was a series, and they don't lose weight after skipping one fatty meal. It's a process. The longer somebody's had an issue, or the more advanced the degeneration that the body has, the more you have to treat the person. It also depends on their overall fitness level. Like somebody who's young, athletic, got good muscle tone, they're going to be easy to fix. Those are the easiest people. The tougher people are people that are older, maybe have an underlying disease of some sort,
Okay.
are not doing any type of exercise. Those people, it takes, sometimes you can only take them so far.
Really? Yeah.
Because they just don't have the muscle to stabilize their structure. It could be they're just so heavy that they've put such a load on their joints that the joint is no longer have the integrity to maintain good structure. So it keeps.
Yeah. How important is because this is probably the area I'm the biggest disaster at, flexibility. How important is that to everything?
Very important.
Okay, yeah.
What you
I'm
want,
screwed. I'm like this table. I'm like a block, I swear.
What you want is you want mobility with functionality.
Okay.
And stability. There's a difference there. Okay? You can be I treated a lot of yoga instructors. Okay?
Yeah, that must be interesting.
They're very flexible, but they don't do enough strengthening to maintain it. So they're over flexible so that their structure doesn't maintain. Okay?
Interesting.
Now, it depends on how they've trained.
Sure.
Some yoga, depending on which type of yoga they were doing. Okay? Where if you take a power lifter, these guys are really strong, but they have the mobility of a rock, So if you're really looking at fitness and in health, you have to have full mobility, good stability at the same time, and this is where CrossFit really kind of exploded because they're making people do everything.
Yeah.
Not just bodybuilding or not just running. They kind of put everything together and it's exploded.
Okay, so on that point, so it's interesting that you can be very flexible but don't have the strength to maintain maybe that position for a very long time.
Yeah.
That's something I never really the stability part is something I never really paid attention to, but I'm curious. So what's the difference between then flexibility and mobility? Because in my mind they see like flexibility seems like when I think flexible I'm like, oh, how far can I stretch? But isn't that mobility too? Do you know? I'm confused. So maybe.
Okay, flexibility would be the amount of range of motion you can go through. Okay. Naturally. Okay. Now you can take some of these circus performers who can bend it over backwards and put the. Okay. They've taken their body beyond the normal range of mobility. Okay. Mobility is the ability to go through a full range of motion. Okay. That is within the normal realm of normalcy for the human body, and it's stable as you go through. If you're going through and all of a sudden you get this clunk, because the shoulder moves halfway through, that's not normal. You have the mobility there. You can go through that full range, but you don't have the stability. Okay. Flexibility, if you're over flexible, you usually don't have stability either. They have a tendency because they've pushed their body beyond the normal limits. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But it's you know what, it's just I think something that I think about and everything we've talked about so far is it just sounds like to me it just sounds like a lot in terms of the amount of different areas you could have, problems, to be a normal, in quotation again, a normal, healthy individual. Yeah, I could maybe I'm sleeping right, eating right, whatever, but I have zero mobility, zero strength, zero flexibility. There's always something. So I guess, is it just different per person in terms of what their goals are, or is there a general, from your experience, is there a general baseline that you're like, if you can do if you have all these 5 things, at a decent level consistently, you're probably doing, a good job. Because if what you're good at here usually means it sounds like a positive and a negative here.
I'll give you another example.
Sure.
Take a marathon runner.
Okay.
Okay. You can run a marathon, but make him bench press 300 pounds. He's trapped underneath the bar. You take a power lifter, he can bench press the 300 pounds, but he can't run a mile. Okay. Which one's healthier? Neither.
Okay.
So you should have a certain amount of strength. Okay. You should have a certain amount of cardiovascular fitness. Okay. You should have the ability to recover adequately. You can be fit, but technically unhealthy. And what I mean by that is, if you watch a marathon or you watch maybe a triathlon, and you'll see these guys that are technically obese. They're carrying too much body fat. Are they fit? They can perform that function, but they're not healthy because of the amount of fat they have, which could lead to a cardiovascular episode later. Are you following me?
Fit and health are two completely different. They're two different things, and I think a lot of times we associate those two together.
It depends on what paradigm of fitness you're using.
Okay. Like, what are the metrics you're using to dictate if you're fit or not?
Yeah. Like, you can take. I just read this study. It was really interesting. They took 50 power lifters at the Olympic level, and every single one of them had a lumbar disc issue. Every single one of them.
Really?
This is the Olympic level. Are they fit? Not anymore. Are they healthy? Not anymore. But they were at this high level of what we would consider an Olympic athlete at one time.
Wow, that's actually very.
When you think about it,
yeah.
Wow, never thought about that.
Yeah, and at that level, because we just see the performance. We don't know the intricacies behind the deficiencies that they might have in doing this performance.
Yeah. I mean, they've pushed their body to such an nth degree that they've damaged it.
Okay.
Marathon. Okay. Here's another one that I like to use when I'm dealing with runners. Runners really, they get addicted, and they get locked in, and they want to go longer and longer and faster and faster. Once you get technically, usually the cutoff line's around 10K. You start to get beyond 10K. It's no longer, you're not getting healthier as you're doing it. You're actually, after a marathon, you're in a pathologic state. There's a lot of things that happen to your body that you have to recover from before you can do another marathon.
Yeah.
And then you get these guys that are doing multiple marathons right in a row. Are they breaking their personal best records on each one? No, because they're putting so much stress into their body by performing that particular. Yeah. So are they really being healthy? No. Okay.
And what's interesting about that is I think we as people, we think when we see examples like that, those are the examples that are defining to us, or subconsciously defining to us, that's what fit looks like, that's what health looks like, where in the powerlifting example, in the running example, and it's until we had this conversation, that's what I would have thought, and I think there's if that's how we're perceiving, if that's what we perceive fitness as or health as, I think there's a problem there, because we don't know the backstory or the intricacies behind what's going on behind all that. It looks good, results, maybe you're getting results, you're performing well, but we don't know the after.
You take a lot of athletes, you can get into an example of some people have to do exercise for their psychological health. and they're utilizing exercise to the degree where it's starting to become unhealthy. They're starting to get, because they're training so much, they're overtraining, then they're starting to get injuries like stress fractures or whatever it may be. That's not healthy. They're using the exercise as their drug to treat their psychological, whatever, maybe they're so upset with their spouse that they just got to get out of the house and run.
Yeah.
Instead of facing the actual issue. And that's another thing. You got to be aware of that when you're treating someone. Why are they getting all these overuse injuries? Is it because they're ignorant of what they're doing, or is it because they're pushing themselves too hard for another reason?
Yeah.
So you have to take time with that patient.
Yeah. And I think that triangle that you described earlier, the psychological, the what was it, physical, the structural, and the chemical, yeah. And that, I think that psychological side plays into all these things, I think, more than we give credit to sometimes.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah. And that's, I can imagine for the work that you do, that could be pretty challenging, because you're not there to give therapy, but like, you're going to have to address that psychological side at some point. Or do you recommend, if someone's really going through that and consistently like coming back to you with the same issue, and you've identified now that it's psychological, would you recommend for them to go to, for example, therapy and stuff? Okay.
Yeah. If it's something beyond my scope, it's like, okay, let's get you to somebody who can help you with that part of it. I'm very comfortable, within the musculoskeletal range, neuromusculoskeletal, and within certain parameters that can be helped through nutrition. Okay, not a problem with that. And certain psychological, maybe you're having maybe had a car accident and you're psychologically, I'm okay with that. But if it's getting deeper, I'd rather have somebody that's
specified to that.
Yeah.
No, and look, that makes a lot of sense. You can't, it can't be everything. I wanted to come on to the supplementation aspect. And that is an area, and I think we touched on this earlier in the conversation of, we all have deficiencies, and how do we address or plug in or the supplementation that we need, or the food that we need to get to that. I actually read, I saw a podcast recently, and the guy was talking about how supplementation is, not that it's bullshit, but he's saying if you're eating right, you should never need supplements. Would you agree with that?
Technically, that's true. Okay. But here's the issues with it.
Okay.
Especially here in Dubai, for example. Is anything fresh here? Truly fresh? There's very little that just got picked yesterday.
Yes.
Out of a very organic grown farm. Okay. So by the time our food gets here, it's been leached of a lot of its vitamins and minerals. Okay? Think about that.
I've never, ever thought of that. That's so interesting.
Now here's the other thing. Like, if depending on where the actual food has been actually grown, for example, American. Okay, there's a lot of most of the food's been made to look great, and have a long shelf life. So they've tweaked it. Is that really healthy for our body? No.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is one of the big issues we're having with. We're seeing such a huge influx of issues with people having food allergies now, because everything's been tweaked that our body don't recognize it, so it starts creating an inflammatory response within the body, and it's because of how quickly the food industry's changed things. Yeah. Okay. Now, going back to, how do we know if we're getting all our vitamins and minerals? And all that? If we look at how we came up with, you need so much level of calcium every day, so much level of magnesium. Yeah. How that was actually done is they took healthy individuals, did blood work of those healthy individuals, and then broke everything down and said, okay, this guy's getting this much food, giving him this much calcium, and they did it over a period of time, right? Well, that was done back in the, I believe it, I maybe, don't hold me on this, it was like in the 20s or 30s.
Oh, that far
when
back?
The RDA did all this.
Oh, shit. Okay. I didn't know it was that long ago. Okay.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Well, the food has radically changed since then.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you are growing your own food, you know how that's grown, and you're eating a totally balanced diet, yeah, you can. But if you're buying stuff off the shelf, it's really hard to make sure. I myself take a multivitamin,
yeah.
Just top things up, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
You know, it's cheap.
Yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think one thing is one of the biggest frustrations I have when it comes to like this whole world, it's not about chiropractic, but medicine and food and all that.
Yeah.
Is everyone has an opinion, and I've also worked in the medical field a little bit for a year, and I've seen, you know, firsthand how like fucked up, you know, things are. Mind my language, but that's the only appropriate word for, you know, what it is.
Yep.
So I don't know, like me personally, like, okay, you take a multivitamin. So I was taking a multivitamin, then someone would come and tell me like, oh, by the way, that's like really bad for you, whatever, and then you go do this and that. So it's so hard to know like what should I trust. Yes, there are commonalities that people will say like across the board, which maybe that's a good indication of what you should be doing. But I feel like as a patient, and if someone who's trying to really like actively go about their health and, you know, get the supplementation, do all the right things, it's very challenging because I think there's way too much information out there.
Somebody's always pushing some type of agenda anymore.
And that's the problem.
It's really tough.
That's the problem.
Even on my side, you get conflicting studies all the time, and studies can be manipulated depending on who's funding the studies.
Of course,
so
yeah.
You really have to read how the study was actually done. For myself, every 6 months, I do my labs. I do all my blood work. So I'm checking, making sure I'm in the sweet spot.
And are you doing just a general blood work checkup, or are you is it like a full? Okay.
I'm 60 now, so as you get older, now a lot of things are happening now with people. People's guts are not in good shape anymore. Not in good shape. So even if you're eating a good meal, if your gut isn't performing right, you're not absorbing it. So you become deficient that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought if I was eating correctly would make my gut better, and I would be able to process things in that way. Because we kind of talked about this, regarding like my stomach stuff.
Yeah.
You did mention like the gut and how you told me go on a probiotic and you do this and do that. Yeah. So how do we figure out? Sorry to interrupt you, by the way. How do we figure out then? How do I know if my gut health is good? Like, what is the test I need? There's like a blood test. Is there a gut health test? You know what I mean? Because gut seems like this mysterious world that obviously now with like, as research has gone on, we know how important it is now and stuff. And it shocked me when you said that even if I'm eating right, if my gut health isn't in the right place or is not performing how it should, then I'm not absorbing all the nutrients from the in quotation marks perfect eating that I'm doing.
Correct. There is what I see a lot of here. Number one is people travel a lot here, so you can get exposed to a lot of different, everything from amoebas to different bacterial infections and that can throw off your normal flora within your gut. That can be an issue. You may have had to go on an antibiotic for a certain length of time.
Yeah, right now.
And that again will throw off your normal flora. So when I'm talking about normal flora, there's certain levels of bacteria that should be within your gut. if you get too much of one type of gut exposure, bacterial exposure into your gut, it can override the good bacteria. Okay, and that can cause inflammation in the gut. The more inflammation in the gut we get, you can get into a thing called a leaky gut syndrome. And then that will trigger off a lot of histamine release, a lot of immunoglobulins will go up because the body's just not understanding what that is.
Yeah.
So probably the biggest issue is, is how well you go into the bathroom. Are you constipated? Do you have diarrhea? Do you teeter-totter between the two? Okay. Are you getting cramping? Do you feel sluggish in the afternoon? All these things come into that. You can do stool samples. You can do colonoscopy. Go up there and look around. But at the very least, you should do is just understand how you're going to the bathroom and what your stools look like. Is it a normally formed stool? Is it yellow? Is it black? Is it watery? Those all mean there's something wrong, and that needs to be addressed right away. Because if we go back to our analogy of our car, if you're putting diesel in your Ferrari, it's not going to run very well, right? So it's the same thing. You can put the best fuel in the world into your body, but if you're not absorbing it,
what's the point?
You're not getting anywhere.
So stool is the place to start, I guess, paying attention to give you an indication of the health of your gut. But obviously that can also be quite variable, I think the issue with that is that's very hard. It's very that indication might be misleading because that's also going to depend on maybe how much did I sleep, what did I eat yesterday, how much water did I drink. So within that if we're using that as an indicator, within that there are still like maybe 3 to 4 things that you need to look at and to like control to truly test if I'm like, okay, all these things are happening consistently. All right, now I know. And I think is there no test, like a physical test that I could do, like a blood test I could do to check my gut health? Because if there is, I will take one today.
There's not one particular one that just one. You have to look at everything.
Really? Okay.
Think of when you using the car example.
Let's keep
going back to that.
Let's keep it. It's perfect. It's working out.
When we're doing our labs, we're doing all that shit. It's like looking at your instrument panel. What's your tachometer doing? What's the amperage doing? What's your oil pressure gauge going? This is what doing laboratory is. Now, if we're not absorbing, something's going to change. And depending on what's not being absorbed will affect different parts of the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the most critical thing is got to have adequate water. That's another thing and drinking coffee does not count.
Yeah, but I'm a coffee drinker. So.
Tea does not count. It needs to be water. The amount of rest and sleep you're getting, so recovery time is critical. If you went out and had a big bender the night before and you got diarrhea in the morning, do you got an issue? Probably not. You just had a big bender.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you're, man, I ate right, I did everything right, and I'm still having these cramps, you got a problem.
So that's how you know. Okay.
Common sense, baby.
Yeah, okay. It's so kind of what we touched on earlier. It's simple, but I think there is a big lack of common sense when it comes to these things.
We are complicated organisms.
Yeah.
In many levels.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many with every, throughout our whole conversation. This has been mind blowing to me. The things I've heard today, I'm like, I had no idea and stuff. And one thing I heard on the concept, sleep was something that only the last few years I even knew how important it was. It's the best drug basically you could take that's free and whatever. But one thing I thought of is one thing I didn't realize, which I heard on a podcast recently, is like, oh, bad if you're not getting enough sleep. That could affect like maybe weight gain or like your metabolism and stuff. If you're not getting enough sleep, but I never heard that if you're metabolically challenged, like you have an issue with your metabolism, like if you're overweight or something, it's the reverse. Like that could also be the reason why you're not, sleeping well. Like one thing causes it, but also if you're not metabolically healthy, that could be affecting your ability to sleep and to stay asleep and so on. And you see, with everything we've talked about, whatever we've said and we've like talked about this, it raises something, it just feels like things keep like in our conversation, things just pop, like things keep popping up. Okay, like, oh, that's the reason for this. But then that happens. Oh, okay. Do this up, but then this happens. That's why, for example, me, I feel like it feels very overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how other people feel, but I'm just, speaking from, my experience.
Health is the body in equilibrium.
That's the word.
Balanced.
Yeah.
And unfortunately our lifestyles today is the anti-equilibrium factor. It's just going to throw us off. We're how often do you go to bed with your phone? Either right next to you or...
Yeah. I go to sleep like watching stuff all the time.
We're having massive issues with people, and if we're not getting that adequate deep sleep and all that, you start to throw off your hormones, which is, again, affecting everything within the cascade of health.
Yeah.
So... now you've got guys that just specialize in sleep, or you can buy the app and you can listen to a certain background noise, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But the key is to get everything within a certain realm where it's all balanced.
It's all balanced. Yeah. And I think, but to understand, I think this is where I like, okay, the body needs to be in equilibrium, but I think as people, you need to put a significant amount of effort in tracking and analyzing and being aware of all these different things in order for you to come to a conclusion of what do I need? Who do I need to see? Do I need, is it a dietitian, a chiropractor, a doctor, And I think because it's such a significant mental and time investment from yourself that you're going to have to do over a period of time to get a real answer. That's why my outlook is probably not the most optimistic, because coming back to what you said earlier, we're very lazy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're more than that. We're lazy, but we're also bombarded today. By the time you go to work, if you're married, you got to come home and spend time with your spouse, your kids. You're not giving yourself what we really need. We're usually the last thing that, especially moms, the last one who gets any type of treat is her,
Yeah.
So these are the ones that walk in, they're 35 and they look 50 and, and it's like they've been giving and not taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And then we get into premature aging, and that's a whole another podcast.
For that, we're gonna save that one for part 2. Charles, I just have 2 more questions for you, and these are questions I ask all my guests.
Okay.
So looking back, either personally or professionally, when I ask you, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
I picked a profession that I can help people. And I do it not for the money. I do it because I really care about people. And unfortunately, in healthcare, you don't see that anymore. It's really rare.
Yeah, it's all about it's money focused, not people focused.
Yeah, and especially now with the corporations coming in. The corporation, you may have a doctor that's really caring and stuff, but the corporation's going, you need to do X amount of procedures. not what the patient needs, because to keep your job, you got to do so many surgeries this week or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's destroying healthcare.
Yeah. And honestly, on that point, I have an example from last week. I had food poisoning, and I went to the hospital. I was in a lot of pain and stuff. And they told me my, that CRP, that reactive protein was, the range was like 0 to 5. Mine was like 150. So they're like, oh my God, you have to stay and like do a GI panel and understand and so on. And I was like, I don't really want to I don't know what's going on. They didn't tell me it was food poisoning. They just said, you need to be admitted and we have to do like all these tests and stuff because they're very expensive, and like we can only do it once you're admitted and so on. And then the next morning, shout out mom for the advice of not doing that. She's like, go, just take, they gave me antibiotics, whatever, go home. There's clearly an infection, so that's what they're going to treat. And the next day I went to like my personal gastro doctor, and she's like, and she just looked at the blood and she's like, yeah, it's food poisoning. Like straight away, like if I had not had that phone call, like if I hadn't called my mom just to like, I always get to get a second opinion, I would have done that. And I would have done like a very, it's not that it's an invasive test, but would have been I feel like so unnecessary for me to have done all that, both from a time, cost, and there is needless. And the next day she's like, yeah, okay, they gave you antibiotics, yeah, take this too, and like, you'll be fine in a couple of days. And I think building on what you said, that's the problem. Yeah. What to do? Healthcare. But on a more positive note, I really love, that you genuinely care about your patients. Guys, I am a patient, so this comes from, my own experience as well. And that's why I wanted to have him on the podcast, because from day one, you were super attentive, and everything you've done has worked. So first, as a patient, thank you very much. It's really been super helpful. And I really do appreciate it. And for my last question, Dr. Charles Jones, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Take care of yourself, because nobody else will. And if you feel like something's not right, it usually is. Full stop.
I don't think it gets better than that. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has really been such an eye-opening experience. I think not only we've talked about chiropractic, nutrition, health, fitness, there's so many areas that we've covered that I think a lot of people listening to this podcast in one of those conversations, they're like, oh, that's me, or yeah, I have that problem, and so on. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing, your knowledge, with all of us. If people want to come visit you, work with you, reach out to you, what's the best way, to get in touch?
I'm at California Chiropractic in Sports Medicine. We're in Dubai Healthcare City. Our phone number is 04-429-8292. Just call the clinic, and girls will be more than helpful to give you an appointment.
Perfect. You guys heard it here, guys. This is the place that I go to, and this is the doctor that I see, so I can't speak highly enough about it. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Guys, to everyone listening, thank you so much. Please make sure to follow, share, like, and subscribe to the podcast on Instagram and other channels at Hope It Helps Pod. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.